Good afternoon, and welcome to another ironic introduction to another video. Today I want to talk about how to min-max your coral as a late intermediate / veteran player. Today I realized with the release of this objective that gives us access to 10 times the 10,000 tier 1 Antlantean coral that I personally would rather save the energy. Yes, it is only 1 day's worth of energy, but when you're doing 1 day's worth of energy on tier 1 riffs and then a whole bunch of energy on tier 2 riffs and then tier 3 riffs, it becomes a lot of energy consumption, and really just like maximizing the energy output so you don't have to waste energy refills is something I think is very important to me. So my general consideration for this, before I go into the actual like where you should use the coral instead, is looking at the rewards, because the rewards of the riffs really affects whether or not it's worth running and utilizing that energy. So that said, when I look at the tier 1 riffs, you've got premium hero crystal shards, which are nice, but as a veteran player you can get a lot of these just by grinding arena, so I don't feel like these hold any value, especially in the consideration of like, let's say you run these and you got 1,000 every time for some reason. That would be over the course of 3 riffs, or essentially 1 full energy refill, you would have 3,000 premium hero crystals for 30 units, which is roughly a good deal. But if it just comes out to a 2-star character, you've spent 30 units on a 2-star character's worth of ISO, and you could have just spent that 30 units, pushing other progression elsewhere. And then these T2 basics and the T2 class catalysts, these are like even worse, because you could have just used that energy to clear the daily instead and get a targeted catalyst / basic catalyst as well. So that said, I don't think these T1 riffs are worth the energy, especially when they're in these large quantities. So I would instead, convert these for freeze without energy use. Moving on to these tier 2 riffs, you do have access to these like 3-star crystals, and if you did get the tier 1 alpha catalyst, I would say this is worth the energy cost. But I, like many players, actually have like an overflow of tier 3 class catalysts, and running the daily of a tier 3 basic for 30 units, you can get more basic tier 3 basic T3 basic catalyst than you can just by running this tier 2 riffs. I mean, like, maybe if you hardcore luck sacked and got tier 3 basic, tier 3 basic, tier 3 basic full when you ran these, then yeah, the numbers do sway the other way, but more likely you're only getting partials, and so you're just better off running the provings rounds. This really holds more value for players who can only clear tier 2 riffs, like newer players, where these tier 3 basics are really good for them because it gives them access to something that they might not have access to otherwise. So progressing forward, this tier 3 riff, this is where I start to say, okay, this is where it's worth the energy consumption. So this is where I would say, okay, run your riffs tier 3 and your tier 4. And I think people can generally agree with that. If you disagree, feel free to comment, but I'm not too worried. I don't think I'm going to have many people disagree with me. As for where to spend your coral, my thing I want to point out is that if you buy the crystals, you only get 2,500 coral of the next rift up. And with the epic rifts having so much value, I think it's more important that you don't convert your tier 3 into epic, because you're just better off running the master and then running the epic, and you don't buy the crystals with your tier 3 because you're gonna have less epic runs as a result. That said, what you should do with your tier 1 and your tier 2 riffs, I believe, is dump them into this conversion here for the maximum amount of conversion rewards, and then dump your tier 2 into this tier 3 conversion for the maximum amount of tier 3 conversion, and then run your tier 3 and your tier 4 riffs. You do have the option, of course, of instead converting them, from 10,000 to 5,000, which is the going rate. You could open these crystals, but again, I don't think the rewards are justified getting half the amount of conversion to the next higher rift. And that's it. You could, if you are having trouble clearing the epic rifts, like you're more of an intermediate player, you could just open these crystals instead of running the uncollected. Like if you're having to pop units to use revives to clear the uncollected, I would say maybe there's an argument for just opening these crystals instead. It's not like you're losing anything out. You're not losing on anything in terms of coral, but you are potentially getting less in rewards. I haven't seen what the rewards look like for these, and unfortunately, the drop table here isn't exactly all inclusive, and so it is hard for me to recommend doing this over running the Rift, as I don't know what the drop rates are, I don't know what the rewards are. But that said, my intention, at least for how I plan to min-max it, is I do intend to use energy refills, if I need to clear all my tier 3s and all my tier 4s and not bother with these crystals. That said, if time is a factor for you, or these rifts just drive you nuts, feel free to open these crystals instead. And if you know what the drop rates are for these, like what you would get if you hypothetically opened a tier 4 Antlantean crystal and you got 5-star hero crystals, 5-star hero crystal shards, because if you get the hero crystal, like, good for you, but we know that drop rate is fairly low. But if you know what these are, and if you know for a fact that these outbalance the other rewards, please let me know in the comments, because I do intend to wait at least a couple more days, so having that information would be beneficial for me as well. That said, this video has probably gone on longer than it needed to, so I will talk to you later.